And we all adopt a critical voice from past bullies or like, you know, comments that have hurt us in our past. It's a very hard thing to do, you know, like letting yourself fail in front of others. Like, what if I told you, you just let go of all your fears and let go of all your guilt, you'll actually get there faster. Yeah. I'm gonna go hug my doggo after this, y'all.
Yeah, definitely.
It kind of goes back to that point of patience. To cultivate mastery in something, you need to have that patience, and you need to go through those like tunes and like going down. Like there's this thing that one of my close friends said, which is like, life is like a spiral, and I think it applies to everything that you work on. So you will go up and up, but sometimes you feel like you go back, but you're still way further in than you thought you did, you know. And in a spiral there's a dip, you know. In that dip, it's completely natural to feel like you're going back, but it's just going up and up and up, even if there are dips in the spiral. So yeah, it's hard. It's a very hard thing to do, you know, like letting yourself fail in front of others. But we only live once, you know. Yeah.
That is lovely. I love that visualization of the spiral. That's super cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
When you encounter like a problem or, you know, the fear, what is usually your first thought?
That's a really good question. Probably that it's very simple. Like, I can't do this, or this is cheesy. Or like, I mean, it always hits on whatever the person's insecurities is. Usually my insecurities are, I mean, the problem with being, I think this is, one of my friends said this, where it's like, when you're really smart, you can convince yourself of everything. You know, you can prove, you can have essays proving why something is terrible if that's what you feel. So I think it really just, my first instinct usually can be a self-critical voice that kind of, and we all adopt a critical voice from past bullies or like, you know, comments that have hurt us in our past. And I think it's important to acknowledge that that part of ourselves comes not from within us, but from outside of us. And it's a wounded part of us. And their life is literally just a perception. Like it's a video game, y'all. It's a simulation in the sense that your perception is literally all that you will experience. So if you notice yourself perceiving something to be not good, take a second and like truly just fight against it. See how you feel if you say, actually, this is actually kind of interesting. Like, just try to make it an argumentative essay instead of, you know, just one side of the coin, and see how it feels. Because more often than not, it's going to be just that voice that comes from whatever wounding you've had in your past. Because more often than not, art is literally about making those mistakes. Even if something is cheesy to one person, for example, that's something I struggle with. Like, oh, this is cheesy. Like, because a lot of times I deal with emotions that are, you know, bittersweet. So, you know, you have to think to yourself, but what about the person who's going to look at this and be like, holy shit, this is going to change my life? Or what about the simple fact that this is how you feel? Even when you're doing something less on the emotional scale and more of like, oh, this is a drawing, objectively, I feel like it's bad. Ask yourself, why do you feel like it's bad? The perspective is off. Okay, next time I'm gonna do some perspective studies. So it's literally about, there's the emotional aspect, which is just literal swill garbage that comes from your pain. But then there's the more constructive, like, oh, take a step, do it anyway, and then we'll improve on it.
Yeah,
you know?
It's kind of like comforting a crying kid and being like, it's okay, we're just gonna do small little things and make you feel better. That's lovely.
Exactly. Like, it's gonna hurt. Like, it's gonna hurt like a motherfucker. Like, there are times where I remember there were periods where I would just cringe at what I had to do and post, and like, I would just do it anyway and just avoid my phone for the day. And like I would
Do you
find some
think,
like,
sorry for
yeah,
interrupting, but do you think
yes.
anybody noticed whenever you felt
Mm.
like that, or the stuff that you were making, it felt like that? Did you get any
Oh,
response from
that's
that?
I usually get positive responses, honestly. Like if people aren't gonna be like it's just you'd be surprised. Like I've never gotten negative feedback that like brought me to my tears or anything like that. Like I think if anything, the only time I get negative feedback is if my posts go into like the alt-right community, and it's always hilarious. I'm telling you, Nicole, it's one of my favorite things. Like one time, I made a comic about like being like having a big nose, and it got like I got so many comments, like anti-Semitic comments.
Ooh, oh
Yeah, I also it
no.
was fucked up, but like I was just like I would just be like, yes, I do have a big nose. What you gonna do? And I was like, and they were like, and then I was like, actually, I'm Muslim, so you can troll me with more content. Like, I was just like, I'm gonna help you. It's so fun. Like it's so like I really don't think I do get criticism from people online. I think maybe you can get discouraged when something doesn't perform as well, but who cares? Again, it kind of comes back to that point of like there has to be a space of you to recognize that people of all walks of life are going to look at your work and they're going to think all those things or whatever, but there's also going to be people who think great things. And I think I always get really humbled when, for example, I'll post like a Q&A and I get like a flood of questions or like compliments from people, and I think that for me always really makes me feel happy. But also like even before I had like so many followers, I think I would just take it a step at a time. Like I would literally just, I'm trying to think back to those days. I think it was easier in a way because again, for me, my fear is people watching me. So when no one is watching me, I feel like I can thrive. So it really depends on every person. Maybe some people feel way more demotivated when they don't have people watching them. It really depends on the person, but I really think it's important to know yourself and understand, is this a wounding from past? Like for example, when I look at my work and I'm like, oh, this sucks, like this blah blah blah, it usually comes from wounding of past bullies. Like I have to acknowledge that a lot of times I echo their sentiments and I don't want to give them that power, versus the artist person inside of me that's like, if I tell this in a more subtle way, I think it would make the story work better. Like it really just depends on which side of yourself you're allowing to take reign on your body, and that comes again through mental health, like taking care of regulating your emotions, regulating through journaling, through whatever. Like that's really important if you want to be someone who can create honest work. I think I'm a very big proponent on that. Like you can make beautiful work that you don't need to have that. You can just literally be making beautiful technical work and people will admire that regardless. But yeah.
What's a time when you had those thoughts and fears about something, went past it anyway, but then you actually failed? How bad was it? Like how bad actually was it?
That's a very, very cool question. I love that.
Thank you.
Well, I would say, well, at school we had to make films every year. And at the end of the year we'd have a showcase where we'd show the films off. And I think I didn't fail on anything, but I think something I really struggled with my art back then was execution. Like I always had really fun ideas, but then when I executed them, I really struggled to make it hit as much as maybe my storyboards or whatever. So I remember like when it came to showing it and like I'd see the reception of mine versus other people. So I do that comparing game, which is inevitable. But again, there's also that part of, there are people who are making films that won awards, and then you have your film that's kind of like, just hanging out, swimming. So I think that was for me painful, particularly in my third year. I think was most painful because that's when I felt like, oh, I should be able to do this. I should be able to get a film that resonates with people. Like, what's going on? And honestly, that was positive for me because it lit a fire up my ass. Like, I remember that year I worked really hard, but I didn't have all these amazing strategies that I do now. So I kind of remember that summer, I just kind of looked at what I did, and I was like, I really like a lot of it, but what are the things I have to improve? And that's the list that I'm looking at right now in front of me. It's like, I wanted to make my art more fun. I wanted to find a new phase and new style. I wanted to make more ugly drawings. I'm literally reading it out. I wanted to learn how to animate with one of my teachers said most good drawings are key poses. And I thought that was really powerful when it comes to story. I'm kind of playing with acting and fine-tuning story structure, like all those things I wanted to improve. And I just took the summer to just fucking go nuts. So I think the way I deal with stuff like that maybe was the growth mindset, where I kind of took time to mourn it. I took time to just be really sad about it. I hung out with friends and just kind of like delved with my own inner turmoil. And it was hard because there was also personal stuff going on in my life with friends and stuff. So like I was a bit depressed during that period. And I think that's when I took solace in my younger self, because my younger self, again, this is all very specific to me, but like my younger self only had art. So I had a period in my life where I didn't have anybody, I didn't have anything going for me, except I had my art. And it wasn't that, and before that was before I got accepted into Cal Arts, before I, had a big following. That was just me being me. So it kind of, you have to go back to your inner child and kind of go back to that point where you did this for the sake of joy, for the sake of whatever it was. Like my sister draws as well, and she says she doesn't enjoy art, but she does it to express herself. Do it to express yourself. You have to figure out, literally forget about, there's this beautiful quote which is like, I should have talked about this. Literally forget success and failure. Like there should be a point in your life where neither success nor failure affects you too much. And I think that's really powerful, because when you're successful and it's all perfect, you might get stuck in a thing where you keep doing the same thing over and over. But when you let it be something that is neutral, more or less, of course it's gonna affect you either way, but like neutral in a sense where it's balanced, where it doesn't shake you too off your high ground either way, either or. And I think that really helped me, where I would just go back into my younger self. I'd be like, okay, I love art because of this, this, and this. I'm gonna draw while I watch Friends or something, and I'm gonna work on improving. I'm gonna do seriously life drawing. There's always something to learn from life drawing. Just literally open a YouTube video of someone dancing and just frame through it, get that gesture down. I would do that, and I found something to be excited about. If it's like, if you fail, let yourself fail and find something else. Let there be something to learn from the failure, basically. Even if you try again. Wait, there's this quote I want to find really fast. Okay, so yeah, I found the quote that I was looking for. Basically, the more you fail, the more likely you are to succeed. And this is from Mark Manson, by the way. And Edison tried over 10,000 prototypes before getting the light bulb right. Michael Jordan got cut from his high school team. Success comes from improvement, and improvement comes from failure. There's no shortcut around it. Perfect example of people who tried really hard and failed anyway. They kept going. There's literally no way around it. So I think that's really cool and powerful. It's just literally people, the greats, have failed so many times. It's just about accepting it and taking that defeat and being like, let it light a fire up your ass. That's the way I like to put it. Let it light up. Like, even if you fail 1,000, okay, this is something that I've also struggled with. When you fail a lot, you feel like shit. You hold on to guilt, and you hold on to all the time you wasted. Think of it this way. Holding on to that is just going to slow you the hell down. Like if you're carrying a lot on your back, it's just going to slow you down. So if you really, 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 really want to be successful and do this thing that you're trying to achieve, what if I told you, it's like a really like funny thing, because like, what if I told you just let go of all your fears and let go of all your guilt, you'll actually get there faster. Like, isn't that amazing? Like, it's kind of like, because I think we kind of feel like we have to shit on ourselves. I feel like we think that shitting on ourselves will get us to that point.
Yeah, I think that's what we learn.
Right. Like, because I think a lot of uninformed like teachers or parents do that. They think that, oh, you did this wrong, like what's wrong with you, like it's kind of like, and I come from a culture that's beautiful and amazing, but it deals with a lot of shame. Like, it's very shame based. So when you do something wrong, there's big shame that wells up within you, and it's still something I struggle with. Like, even as I talk to you, like I was kind of thinking about mistakes I've made like at jobs, and that fucks me up, you know, that really fucked me up, that has happened. And I think that this idea that like, if you actually really truly want to not fuck up, you have to let go of that fear, because like, it's just going to create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, what if I told you that all these negative thoughts, if you let them go and just ignored them, you can't let them go, they're going to be there, but if you just ignored them and told them maybe, but what about not? Like, you really just have to separate yourself from those thoughts. Just kind of like think of yourself and those thoughts as different parts of yourself, different entity. Like, for me, my voice, my critical voice is, I like to think of it as a mean school teacher, you know? It's different for all of us, and we all have things that we deal with that are so painful and shameful that it hinders us, you know? And there are going to be days where it does hinder you and stops you, and just go easy on yourself. Just draw for a minute that day, you know? And it's okay. It's really hard. You're not doing it all on your own. We're all dealing with it collectively. It's part of the human experience. And I hope that makes you feel more like less alone. But really, really, we just need to focus on where we want to go, and all that baggage of what we could have done and what we should have done and how we could have done things different and why we didn't do things different and how it was our fault. That can all go out the door, because it's just taking space where creativity can flow. And just tell yourself that if I really want to get better, I really have to let go of that. Like, I really have to like think of it as like it's kind of funny. Like, it's kind of like studying. Like, you don't want to study, but you know studying will help you. Try to think about it as your mind, like giving your mind a cleaner room, like letting your room get cleaned up. Like, just if you let go of these things, you're gonna have a cleaner room and you'll be more productive.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. That kind of reminds me of what Mike Randa talks about, how you said, instead of using fear to drag you down, it pushes you forward to wherever your goal is.
100%, because it's so like, it's so powerful when you realize that fear is within all of us, and it's something that you can use to your advantage, because shame and fear, those things can be good for us in small doses, like 100%. I don't know if you've watched Big Mouth, but it's like a very inappropriate show, but it's really funny sometimes. And there is this character that's basically shame, and every character encounters shame, and at the end you realize shame is actually helping you from not doing your most horrible, and it kind of regulates human nature. It helps us sometimes. Like, if you go and kill a dog, God forbid, there should be shame. Mm-hmm. I like how both our faces were like,
yeah, we're like, how could you?
Yeah, right? Yeah. How could you, metaphorical Noor? But yeah, like, it's like, shame is important in small doses. It's gonna be there, but why is it there? Like, ask yourself, how can you turn the tables on these negative feelings? You know what I mean? It's gonna be there, and what can you do to just give it a Uno reverse card? You know, like, let it. Oh my god!
I love the metaphor.
Thank you. I think I'm gonna use that for a comic.
Do it.
Like, thanks. It's just like, literally just just turn the tables. Just be like, oh, you sneaky Mr. Negative sock puppet of doom. Like, I'm gonna reverse this and just do my thing. Because I really do think a lot of my successes came from past failures that, you know, pushed me to learn. And again, like, it's a cycle. Like, there's this thing that me and Gabby always talk about, which is basically you start out really, you know, a child full of life, full of energy and happiness, and then you kind of learn that the world is kind of fucked up, and you kind of become all emo. This is when you go through your emo phase. Then the circle, you know, turns full when you realize there's still beautiful things despite all the shitty things, you know. And it's a circle. And sometimes I think in our culture we're really obsessed with, like, you know, sad endings, or like, you know, kind of ending things with a surprise or an edgy way, and usually those things are seen as more mature or more critically acclaimed. But this comes from that book that I mentioned earlier. The ancient Greeks actually thought the Divine Comedy was the utopia of storytelling, you know, the comedy, the seeing the beauty past the ugly, that was considered the most like, you know, awesome thing to do. And I think that with our culture, like, we can try to bring that back, where instead of ending things on like, oh, a surprise, fuck you, Game of Thrones, you can really just wrap things up in the way they feel most naturally inclined to, and really just work on getting to that third point of the full life of circle, like the full circle of life, which is basically things will rebirth. But just like there's death, there's life. Just like there's terrible people, there's, like, I read this thing that's like, for every terrible thing that happens in the world, there are 10 small acts of kindness, you know. And I thought that was beautiful. And it's a really just true thing about life, is just there's always going to be that fear and horrible times and failures that you feel like you will never move past from, you know. Sometimes you'll fail and fail and fail, and you'll see all your friends succeeding, and you'll be like, what is wrong with me? Like, I've had that happen to me, and it's so hard when you're in it, but you have to like have that raw self-belief that you will get through it. And if you keep trying to get through it, you will actually break through with more with different things. Like, I've noticed that maybe for some people that, like, in my life, that, you know, maybe they'll have a more seamless transition from one thing to the next. They're doing their own thing and it's awesome. But for me, I learn different things when I'm fucking up and going back. You know, we all have different experiences. We all have, you know, different levels of privilege in our life and different sorts of opportunities. And I think that's going to be okay, because the world is, oh my God, I'm going to quote Hamilton. The world was wide enough for so much, you know, like, the world is big. The world has space for all these collective experiences. And I think trying to be all these things at once, you know, trying to be an artist, a storyteller, a writer, like, all those things, you can be all those things at different points in your life. Like, you can be different levels and just be okay with it, you know. Like, even if you feel like the only thing you're good at is coloring your paintings, like, everybody always compliments you on your painting and you want to be really good at story, you can get there. It's just a matter of finding ways to do it in different from your counterparts, you know, and accepting that it's going to be different, and accepting the lessons you learn are individual to you. Because I remember there was this period in my life where I felt like, again, like that thing where I was like the only one struggling, and all my friends were, you know, which is not true, but at the time it felt like they were all thriving. And I remember thinking to myself, like, they're gonna have a period in their life where they're gonna struggle a lot. Maybe it's not now. I don't need to shit on them for having a good time right now, you know. It's honestly like, we all gonna deal with different things at different times. You know, some people are gonna deal with the loss of a loved one that's too soon, or like, you know, whatever, or like a debilitating disease, whatever. Like, everyone has their own struggles, and it's not about comparing the struggles, honestly. Like, I think that's gonna be useless. I think acknowledging that there are different kinds of struggles and different levels of struggles is important, but it's not going to take away your own pain and take away your own, like, it's not going to help you take that away. Like, is it going to really help you?
I hate it when people say, like, well, my problems, it could always be worse, because that is true.
Yeah, I
But-
mean 100%, but like, it's not gonna help. It's not gonna help you get out of it. And like, there's this really cool quote that I love that's like, someone drowning 10 feet underwater is drowning just as much as someone 40 feet underwater. And it's really poignant because collectively, I think humans in general feel very similarly. Like, we all feel and experience joy in the same ways, but we think differently. And I think making space for those differences and allowing people to, homophobes and racists aside, but like, just making space for those different kinds of people and different walks of life, and just accepting that there's going to be different sorts of things that you're going to be dealing with, and just validating it, but also trying to make space. Like, I think when people try to be like, oh, people struggle in different ways from you, I think what they're trying to say, or what they're actually forgetting to mention, is the gratitude aspect. So I think all of us have things that we can be grateful for while we're struggling with something. And I think that's the more important thing, rather than being like, oh, my struggle isn't that big. No, your struggle fucking sucks. You're dealing with a lot. You're feeling a lot. That's okay. But maybe it will help you to see things in a better way when you look at the things that are actually still with you. And I think that's more of kind of just calling for an inner power, rather than being like, oh, well, I have this and this,
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
I have this image in my head when I'm struggling with something, where I imagine myself as a little girl hugging my dog that we have now, because I didn't have a dog as a kid. I think that makes me happier than everything. If I had to chase away dementors, that's the image that I would use. And I think it's just important to just have that for yourself, so that you can keep going on. Yeah, I'm gonna go hug my doggo after this, y'all.
Yeah, definitely.
Bye.